Who do you think you are? Get out now. The shrill voice cut across the room like a whip. Heads turned, forks paused in midair, and the steady hum of chatter in the upscale restaurant fell silent. The source of the chaos was a young white woman in a crisp black apron, standing with arms crossed and her chin tilted high. Her voice was sharp enough to command the attention of the entire dining floor, though the disrespect in her tone carried like a sour note through the elegant atmosphere. The man she was addressing didn't flinch. He sat quietly composed, his dark eyes steady beneath a calm brow. His salt and pepper hair glistened faintly under the chandelier light, his tailored suit fitting him with quiet dignity. He did not look like a troublemaker. In fact, he looked like a man who belonged there more than anyone else in the room, yet the waiter saw him differently. To her, he was just another guest she assumed was out of place. "You heard me," she continued, her words laced with arrogance. "People like you don't just walk in here without a reservation. This isn't some cheap diner. Out." A murmur rippled among the customers. Some shook their heads in disapproval, while others pretended to return to their meals, though their ears stayed tuned to the drama unfolding at the center of the restaurant. The man, Denzel, slowly raised his head, his expression unbothered but firm. His voice, deep and smooth, carried enough weight to hush the whispers. "Is this how you speak to all your guests?" he asked evenly. The waiter scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Only to those who don't belong. I'm not wasting a premium table on you when actual paying customers are waiting." The insult lingered in the air, heavy and offensive. Some diners gasped audibly. A couple near the corner shook their heads and muttered, "Unbelievable." But the waiter, drunk on her own authority, failed to notice. Denzel sighed softly, leaned back in his chair, and clasped his hands together. His composure only seemed to irritate her further. "What's your name?" he asked. "My name?" She gave a mocking laugh. "Why, you gonna complain? Go ahead, I run this floor and I don't take nonsense from anybody, especially not from people who think they can just sneak in." The arrogance in her voice echoed through the room, staining the polished atmosphere the restaurant had built over years of fine service. But if the waiter thought her words had cut him down, she was mistaken. Denzel remained still, like a lion too patient to pounce. Instead, he looked around the room at the faces watching him, some sympathetic, others ashamed, and a few simply curious. He knew the weight of silence. He knew the power of patience. And at that moment, though the woman thought she held authority, it was Denzel who commanded the room. "Do you know who I am?" he finally asked, his voice calm yet edged with quiet strength. The woman smirked. "Another entitled guest who doesn't understand how things work around here, and if you don't leave now, I'll have security escort you out." Her tone was final, sharp as a slammed door. And then, as if the universe itself wanted to pause, the restaurant doors opened. A tall man in a charcoal suit rushed in. Mark, the restaurant's general manager. His expression was a mixture of panic and dread. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on Denzel and his jaw nearly dropped. "Sir," Mark exclaimed, moving quickly across the room, "I am so sorry for this, please forgive us." The waiter blinked in confusion, her face twisting. "Sir, forgive us, what are you talking about, Mark? He doesn't even have a reservation." Mark turned to her, eyes blazing with horror. "Do you have any idea who you're talking to?" The woman folded her arms, her arrogance refusing to falter. "I don't care who he thinks he is, no reservation means no table." The room buzzed with anticipation, diners leaning in, eager to see how the tension would unfold. Mark lowered his voice, but the weight of his words was so heavy that silence swept the room once again. "That man," he said slowly, "is the owner of this restaurant." Gasps erupted across the dining floor. The waiter's face drained of color. She stumbled backward, her mouth opening but no words forming. The smugness that had decorated her tone only minutes ago evaporated, leaving behind wide-eyed fear. Denzel finally stood, tall and commanding, his presence filling the space with authority that could not be questioned. He didn't shout, he didn't sneer, he simply looked at her with disappointment that cut deeper than anger ever could. "Ownership isn't about titles," he said, his voice steady, almost fatherly. "It's about respect for the people you serve, no matter who they are. Every person who walks into this place deserves dignity, and today you forgot that." The woman's lips trembled, her arrogance had shattered. She looked down at the polished floor, unable to meet his gaze. Mark whispered frantically to Denzel, begging him to sit to let the situation be resolved quietly, but Denzel wasn't finished. He turned to the diners who had witnessed it all. This restaurant, he continued, his voice strong enough for every corner of the room to hear, was built not just to serve food but to serve humanity. To create a place where no one is looked down on no matter how they look, dress, or speak. Because respect, he paused, letting the word hang in the air, is the true flavor of hospitality. The diners erupted in applause, some even rising from their seats. The waiter's face burned with humiliation. For the first time, she realized the lesson hidden in her mistake: arrogance blinds, but respect opens doors. And yet this was only the beginning. Because Denzel wasn't done teaching her that day. The clapping died down, leaving behind a strange hush that seemed to linger like the echo of thunder after a storm. The waiter, pale and shaken, stood rooted to the spot. A few moments ago, she had carried herself like a queen commanding her kingdom. Now she looked like a pawn caught in her own reckless move. Mark, the manager, rubbed his forehead nervously. He glanced at the waiter, then back at Denzel, unsure of what to do. The entire restaurant was holding its breath, waiting for Denzel's next move. "Sir," Mark said softly, "please allow me to escort her to the back. She'll be disciplined immediately. This won't happen again." But Denzel raised his hand to stop him. His eyes remained fixed on the young woman, whose shoulders sagged under the weight of her embarrassment. "No," Denzel said firmly, his deep voice resonating across the room. "She stays right here." The waiter's eyes widened. She swallowed hard, wishing the floor would open and swallow her. "This isn't just about discipline," Denzel continued. "It's about understanding." He stepped closer, his presence towering yet calm. "Tell me something," he asked her. "What made you think I didn't belong here?" The woman's lips parted, but no words came out. The room was so quiet that even the clinking of cutlery had stopped. She stammered, I thought." "You thought what?" Denzel pressed gently, though his eyes didn't soften. "That I was less worthy, that my presence here threatened the elegance of this place." Her throat tightened. Every eye in the restaurant burned into her skin. She wanted to scream that it was a mistake, that she hadn't meant to sound that harsh, but she knew deep down that wasn't true. "I judged too quickly," she muttered finally, her voice cracking. "Too quickly?" Denzel repeated, tilting his head slightly. "No, you judged arrogantly, there's a difference." The truth of his words pierced her like a blade. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, but she fought them back. "Look around you," Denzel gestured to the diners, many of whom were still watching intently. "Every person in this room is different, different races, different backgrounds, different stories. That's what makes this place alive. But the moment you decide that someone doesn't belong, you poison the very spirit that keeps this place thriving." The diners nodded, murmurs of agreement rising. Denzel leaned in slightly, lowering his voice, but the whole room still felt the weight of his words. "When you serve people, you don't just carry plates, you carry trust. And when you insult a guest, you're not just insulting them, you're insulting everyone who believes this restaurant is a safe space." The waiter's chest heaved as silent tears finally broke free and rolled down her cheeks. The strength in her posture crumbled, and for the first time that night she looked fragile. Mark cleared his throat nervously. "Sir, if you'd like, we can suspend her right away. I'll make sure the staff understands." But once again, Denzel shook his head. "Suspension teaches nothing if the heart remains unchanged. No, she needs to stay and learn." The waiter's head snapped up in disbelief. "Learn?" "Yes," Denzel said calmly. "You're not walking away from this with a slap on the wrist. You'll face the very people you disrespected and serve them with humility, every single one of them." A collective murmur swept the room. Some diners exchanged surprised looks. The waiter blinked, horrified. You want me to keep working after all this?" "Yes," Denzel replied, "because true growth doesn't happen in hiding. It happens when you face the people you wronged." Her hands trembled as she glanced around the room. Dozens of eyes met hers, some stern, some sympathetic, some almost pitying. The thought of approaching those tables, of placing food in front of the same people who had seen her arrogance, made her stomach churn. But something in Denzel's gaze anchored her. He wasn't mocking her, he wasn't humiliating her, he was offering her something far more difficult, the chance to be better. Mark exhaled, defeated. "If that's what you want, sir, we'll do it." Denzel nodded. Good, and while she does, she will not just serve, she will listen. To every person she attends to tonight, she will say, I apologize for forgetting my duty of respect. And she will mean it. The waiter's breath hitched, her pride screamed at her to refuse, but her heart knew better. She wiped her eyes, her voice trembling. I'll do it. The tension in the room eased slightly, replaced by a cautious sense of anticipation. Denzel finally sat down again, his calm presence reclaiming the space. He waved to the diners. Please enjoy your meals. Tonight isn't about a mistake, it's about a lesson, and we're all part of it. The chatter slowly resumed, though every pair of eyes still flickered toward the shaken waiter as she began her humbling journey. Her first table was a middle-aged couple in the corner. She approached with shaky hands, her voice quivering as she spoke. I want to apologize, she said, staring at the floor, for forgetting my duty of respect earlier. The woman at the table looked at her softly. We all make mistakes, she said gently, but don't forget, how you treat people says more about you than about them. The words sank deep into her chest. She nodded quickly, whispering thank you before retreating. At the next table, a group of businessmen gave her sharper looks. One leaned forward. You embarrassed yourself, he said bluntly. But remember, opportunity often wears the disguise of failure, don't waste it. She bowed her head, the sting of his words slicing into her pride. By the third table, her tears had dried, replaced by a heavy sense of reflection. She began speaking with more sincerity, her voice steadier, though her eyes remained low. Denzel, from his seat, watched silently. He wasn't interested in seeing her punished. He wanted to see if she could evolve. Every interaction was chiseling away at the arrogance that had once defined her posture, shaping something rawer, truer. Later that evening, when the dinner rush calmed and the final plates were cleared, the waiter returned to Denzel's table. She looked exhausted, not from carrying trays but from carrying the weight of her mistakes. She swallowed hard, then finally raised her eyes to meet his. I've apologized to everyone, and I know sorry isn't enough, but I want to thank you for not letting me walk away unchanged. For the first time all night, Denzel's expression softened. Growth begins with acknowledgement. You've taken the first step. But, she whispered, her voice trembling, how do I ever undo the damage? How do I erase what I did to you? You don't erase it, Denzel said gently. You replace it with actions, with humility, with kindness. Mistakes are chapters, not endings. What matters is what you write next. Her throat tightened, but this time with gratitude rather than shame. The diners who remained clapped softly as though acknowledging her small redemption. And yet, even as the applause warmed her heart, she knew this wasn't the end of her journey. Because redemption isn't earned in one night, it is tested over time. And Denzel, though forgiving, was not done teaching her. The real test was still to come. The night had grown quiet. The clinking glasses, polite laughter, and chatter of diners had faded into soft echoes as the restaurant closed its doors. Only a few staff remained, cleaning tables and sweeping the polished floors. The waiter, Melissa, sat on a stool in the corner, shoulders hunched, exhaustion written all over her face. Tonight had stripped her pride layer by layer until she felt bare, vulnerable, and exposed. Yet in the quiet of her reflection, she sensed something new stirring inside her: humility. Denzel, however, hadn't left. He remained seated at his table, sipping water, observing silently. For hours he had allowed her to face her lesson, but the real test, the final measure of her change, was still waiting. Mark, the manager, nervously approached Denzel. Sir, it's late, should I let her go home now? She's clearly learned her lesson. But Denzel shook his head. His eyes stayed fixed on Melissa, who avoided his gaze. No, she's learned part of the lesson, the other half is still ahead. Melissa looked up, her heart sinking. What do you mean? Denzel leaned forward, his hands clasped. Apologies are words, service is action, but transformation, true transformation, is revealed when no one's watching, when you have the choice to walk away or to rise higher. Tonight, I'll give you that choice. Her throat tightened. Choice. Yes, Denzel said firmly. Tomorrow there's an event here, a charity dinner for underprivileged kids. I was supposed to bring in my top servers, but I'm giving the lead position to you. Melissa's eyes widened. Me, after everything I've done tonight? Yes, you, Denzel replied. Because humility only matters when it fuels responsibility. Those kids, many of them have never eaten in a place like this. They've been judged, dismissed, overlooked, just as you judged me. If you can serve them with the dignity they deserve, you'll prove you've truly changed. Melissa's heart pounded. The thought of standing before children who had known rejection while carrying the memory of her own arrogance terrified her. But somewhere deep inside, she knew this was her chance to redeem herself, not just in Denzel's eyes but in her own. "I'll do it," she whispered, voice shaky but determined. Denzel nodded slowly, his sternness softening. "Good, then tomorrow you'll have your true test." The restaurant buzzed with unusual energy. Balloons decorated the entrance, cheerful music filled the air, and tables were lined with dishes far more colorful and playful than the usual fine dining selections. The children arrived wide-eyed, some holding their parents' hands, others clutching tiny backpacks. Their laughter lit up the room like sunlight breaking through clouds. Melissa stood at the entrance, apron tied neatly, her hair pulled back. She greeted each child with a genuine smile, bending to their level as she welcomed them. "Hi there, we're so glad you're here," she said warmly. Her voice carried no arrogance, no pretense, only sincerity. Inside, she moved from table to table, serving plates with care. Instead of the stiff professionalism she once wielded as armor, she now knelt to talk to the children, asking about their dreams, their favorite foods, their lives. One boy with tattered shoes whispered shyly, "I've never been anywhere like this before." Melissa smiled gently. "Well, guess what? Tonight this is your place, you belong here." The boy's eyes lit up and Melissa felt something shift inside her, something deeper than shame, something brighter than pride. She was no longer proving herself, she was simply serving with love. From the corner of the room, Denzel watched, arms folded, his expression unreadable. Mark stood beside him, whispering, "She's different today, she's glowing." Denzel nodded, because humility once learned becomes light. Later that evening, when the last child had left and the restaurant was once again quiet, Melissa approached Denzel. Her apron was smudged, her feet ached, and her eyes were tired, but her heart felt lighter than it ever had. "Thank you," she said softly, "not just for forgiving me, but for showing me what I was blind to. Yesterday I thought respect was optional, today I know it's everything." Denzel studied her for a long moment before finally speaking. "Respect is the foundation of every relationship, between strangers, between colleagues, between humanity itself. Without it, walls go up. With it, bridges are built. Yesterday you built a wall, tonight you built a bridge." Tears welled in Melissa's eyes. "I don't deserve this second chance, but I'll spend every day proving I was worth it." Denzel's face softened into a small smile. "That's all I needed to hear." He stood, his presence filling the room with a quiet authority. "Remember this moment, Melissa. One mistake doesn't define you. What defines you is what you do after the mistake. That's the real story." She nodded, her heart swelling with both relief and resolve. Word of the incident spread far beyond the walls of the restaurant. Customers who had witnessed it shared the story not as gossip but as a parable of humility and grace. Some spoke of the waiter's arrogance, but most spoke of her transformation. Melissa, once known among her peers for her sharp tongue and quick temper, became known for her kindness, her attentiveness, and her respect. Every tray she carried was no longer just food, it was a reminder of the night she nearly lost everything and the man who taught her the value of humility. And Denzel, he didn't just remain the owner of the restaurant, he became the quiet architect of countless lessons, teaching not with punishments but with wisdom, patience, and the power of giving people a chance to change. Because in the end, the true heart of leadership is not control, it is guidance. And the greatest measure of strength is the ability to lift others higher, even after they've stumbled. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to comment where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more interesting videos like this one.